It says we're live. Are we live? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Please let me know in the comments if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, if your computer is on. Let me know. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today I have a very special set of guests. Patrick and Liv run the Mach-E vlog channel on YouTube. And I wanted to reach out because the EV transition is impacting a lot of people. It's not just a Tesla thing. It's an everybody thing. So I really wanted to reach out and start really building some bridges with other communities to hear their perspectives about their ownership with their EVs, how they see the EV landscape moving forward, their experiences in the real life, what they think of other car companies and things like that, and just keeping the conversation very, very loose. So thank you so much for joining me. I want to welcome our very special guests, Patrick and Liv. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited to get the conversation going, and I always forget to turn off the stupid music. I'm so bad at this. Here we go. I always got sometimes I have the music on in the background and I forget. It's in my ear. I'm like, what is that song? Oh yeah, it's from my stream. Duh. Yeah, exactly. So for those that are not familiar with your channel, maybe I spend a few seconds or a couple minutes to just walk us through your channel. Make sure you plug your socials and all that good stuff, and sort of what your channel covers.
Sure. So we didn't really plan this out. During the pandemic is when I put in our order for the Mach-E. It was June 28th, 2020. I just made a video about that. I called it Mach-E Vlog because I thought hey, I'll just document our process of ordering and getting the Mach-E. And it sort of took off, and as you guys probably all know, there's a ton of interest in EVs and there's a ton of Tesla people. And I went out, oops, stuff is falling. I went out and, I saw other Tesla people doing this. I was like, hey, that could actually be fun and cool. So we'll sort of do some of what they do. And it's been great. We got our Mach-E March of 2021. We started documenting our road trips, just everyday experiences with that. But we also sort of branch out and we take a look at other EVs. This past weekend, we went to a really cool event that we're editing the video for, but it was an EV conversion expo. So it was a 65 Mustang and a Corvair and some old Chevy pickup trucks that they converted to EV.
And a Brat.
And a Subaru Brat. So yeah, just really awesome vehicles. And it's sort of fun because we get to dive into all of this stuff, and it's a really cool community. And as we were talking about before we went live, we can sometimes get into this Twitter world and YouTube comment world where there's this toxicity. But we love the fact that we get out there and we see other EV owners, whatever brands, and we get excited. When there was a Plaid that rolled up on Saturday at the Retro EV event, everybody just went and gathered around the Plaid because we're all electric fans. So it's really cool. But yeah, we try to be active on Instagram and Twitter. I'm on there a lot. Forgive me if I've gotten into a battle with you over whatever dispute. But we're on there as Mach-E Vlog, MACHE_vlog. Same on Instagram. We try to engage with people, and we'll combat some of the FUD, but we will also try to engage. And had a battle last week with the Tesla fan, and they're in SoCal. So I'm like, well, hey, we're going out there for fully charged live next month. Can we meet? Can we just say hello? Because I find that that breaks down a lot of those barriers.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think we're talking about it before, the real life experience of the EV community is very different than the online experience of the EV community. I always see the division, and the one thing I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, there's been this trend in society. I don't know what it is, but you can see that division is really driving a lot of the conversation. And then I'm here on the Tesla side, and I'm like, okay, so we're all bitching and whining about how division's bad, and then I'm seeing certain dynamics appear within even our own community. I'm like, okay, guys, we got to be better than this. We have to do a better job of really becoming really one people. Let's share our interests, let's share what we like, but let's do it in a respectful and peaceful manner. And that's what I always experience in person. Always experience that in person. And yeah, I'm hoping that this conversation can sort of bring this to light as well on the internet and on Twitter. Probably not Twitter, because Twitter is a freaking it's a war zone in there. But as much as we can, right? So again, I really appreciate you accepting the invitation and coming on. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. Liv, you and I were talking a little bit before the stream that we were talking about the guitars, and you talked about how you've been doing some musical stuff as well in your life. Maybe talk a little bit about that too, so people can get to know you. Maybe talk a little bit about yourselves as well, if you don't mind.
Oh goodness! Well, I wish my musical career was actually a career like yours as a Metallica cover band. No, I just grew up with music, and it was a passion of mine, and like we were saying before, that stuff that sort of falls by the wayside as I've entered the workforce and very focused. So I think you said the word re-engage, which was really, you're re-engaging with your passions and your hobbies. And maybe that's one of the things you really like about EV stuff, is that we're engaged together, and it's definitely turned into a passion and hobby. So we should throw a guitar in the car. Together.
We're sort of slightly famous because, or actually she is, because every time we go on a road trip, we always put a hula hoop in the back. And so when we're charging, and people are like, well, what do you do when you're charging? I was like, well, she hula hoops. And so
that's awesome.
I would say known for the hula
known
hoop
for
there.
it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're standing around at a charging station, it's not that long, but I kind of want to move, so throw a hula hoop.
Right.
But I think that's like music and creativity, is having a little whimsy in your life. So let's do that. Put a guitar in
it. We could do like EV charging concerts.
Ooh, okay. That
might
be something I'm far away from now, so he'll have to come with us.
Yeah.
I'll be there. I'll bring my amp and everything. It'll be freaking awesome. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is one of my dreams, actually. EV powered show.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like that's the one thing I've always, it's becoming a trend and a bigger point of discussion, because I've sort of like, for example, within the Tesla community, there's been like a little bit of talk about, how, the Electrify America has stations, supercharger stations for Tesla. And there's been discussions around, why don't we turn these supercharger stations into, like, Elon Musk has talked about doing a retro restaurant, but like, why wouldn't you offer options or things for people to do while they charge, even if it's a 20-minute charge or if it's an hour charge, who cares? That opens up an opportunity for people to be, make it more communal and make it something that people can come together. So it almost feels like this transition is opening up a potential door for stuff like that. So like what you're discussing could very well become reality in some form,
Yeah,
it's
I
interesting to think about.
Like we've sort of talked about it, like, as we've talked to other EV people, charging stations, supercharger locations, they're, some of them are in great spots, but a lot of them, of course, a lot of them are at Walmarts. And it's like, I don't think that's, or I hope that's not where they end up always being. And it's like, I think there is some type of business model that's going to be out there where it is, whether it's a lounge or some type of entertainment or whatnot. But it's like, I think there's got to be a better way of doing this. Right now, it's like there's an empty plot of land and we can get electricity out there. That's a great place for a charging location. But, the Walmart in particular, you're always at the far reaches of the parking lot. And, you got to walk across, gas cars driving past you just to get into the bathroom and stuff. It's like somebody, somebody's going to be out there and come up with some type of good solution. And it could be a retro restaurant, or I like the idea. I think it was a Tesla idea of putting in like a little drive-in theater type thing, which would be really cool. Sure. And it may not have, you don't want to be there for a full movie, but it's like, hey, a 20-minute episode of South Park,
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, I think, establishing a new attitude towards gassing up. Like, a lot of the focus has been on expediting the process as much as possible. Like, how fast can you charge? How fast can you get in and get out? But I think that we're changing it a little more to like, this is a stop where you can nourish other things. And like, yeah, your car is charging, but like, what else can you do here? And like Patrick said, this is potentially a missed opportunity that hopefully they're going to take, and that there's so many things that can be put in there, both amenities, accessibility, restrooms right there, and also coffee shops, food, nourishment. Like, there's people who are going to be there for a chunk of time, and we can make that a slow, pleasant process and fulfill other aspects of our lives while we're doing that. It could be product research or whatever. I don't know. Like, but here's an opportunity this time. And instead of perhaps focusing on like, get out, go fast. It's like, what can we do here?
And still have that option, like, because we know people that are like, we did the race to Vegas with Out of Spec Studios, and Kyle Connor was, literally, had it in gear as his partner was unplugging the plug and just racing to the next one. And then us on the other hand, we were talking to people and hula hooping.
We lost. Oh, spoiler. Sorry. Go watch it. And you didn't hear that.
That's very interesting. It's funny you say that, because when we got our Tesla, like the mentality before, when we had a gas car and I was doing anything more than say a 3-hour drive. Like I remember going on I had a 7 or 8 hour drive. So I used to live in Pennsylvania, in the east part of Pennsylvania, a town called Bethlehem. And I had to drive west into some random place in Ohio. I forget the name of it. But it was like a 6-7 hour long trip, and I was in a Mazda 6. And my whole thing was like, I need to get there as quick as possible, because I don't want to be in this car. I want to get to my destination. Then when we got our electric vehicle, our Tesla, these stops, like they force you to slow down in a way. Like they force you to say, hey, you got to wait at least 15-20 minutes. Like this is the requirement of having a vehicle, especially at this time. But then I realized that having that mechanism on its own made me so much more relaxed and well rested for the end of the trip than being in a gas car and racing to the end, because I got to get out. I stretch my legs. Maybe I check Twitter or the phone and look at text or whatever. I don't know. I just use the time to sort of stretch out and relax. And so that was a very fascinating dynamic. And yeah, I may have arrived 1 or 2 hours later than I would have if I was in a gas car. But when I arrive at the destination, I actually have more usable time because I am well rested and I'm not angry about my 7-hour road trip that I just took in a gas car. It was fascinating.
So for us, like one of our minor road trip or weekend road trip destinations is Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we're in Denver, Colorado. I forget the mileage, but I think it's like 350 miles down there. So I see it sort of both ways. Like there were times where we'd get off work a little bit early, and then we'd like try to fly down there as quick as we could in our gas car so that we could get checked into the hotel at a decent hour and stuff. Doing it in the Mach-E, that changes it, because we have to have those stops. We can't just take 5 minutes for gas and then hop right back in and keep going, and eat in the car and that type of thing. But I was looking at my past road trips, and it's like, other than those times where I was like really, really rushing, the time that I took in the gas car versus the time I took in a Mach-E were the same, because it's like, it is about 350 miles. So it's like, at some point we want to stop for dinner. Now I can coordinate, like, okay, we're going to stop. We're going to get something to eat, or not, like a dinner, but like lunch, So I'm going to stop for like 40 minutes, get something to eat, car's charging, versus go get gas and get something to eat. So it was like 7.5 hours in the gas car, 7.5 hours in the Mach-E, going at a decent pace, not rushing. But the gas car could still beat us if I were, had to. But yeah, I like that mentality of like, you get there, you're not like drained, you're sort of like relaxed, and it is better. I mean, it's like, you look at all the studies that say the more hours after about 500 miles driving per day, it's like you're slightly intoxicated, because you think you're on point, but your reaction times are slowing down and whatnot. So getting out, stretching your legs, it's all good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said, the intoxication part, like the safety angle of it is something that's not well understood and not a lot of people talk about. And what you said about like the net total time, if you're going to plan to take lunch anywhere on a road trip, like I feel like so many people that don't have EVs don't understand that. Like if you're going to stop for lunch anyway, like it's the same time, because you're stopping, that charge becomes your lunch, It's like the net time is the same. It's fascinating.
Challenged my brother, because when I got the Mach-E, he was anti-EVs for all of the reasons I'm sure everybody's heard. But one of them was, I like to go on road trips and gas only takes me 5 minutes. And I was like, I guarantee you it doesn't take you 5 minutes. Yeah. He's traveling with his wife and kid. I was like, seriously, next time you go on a road trip, I want you to time from the time you exit to the time you get back on. And you tell me how long that is. Yeah. And he called me up right after he took his next road trip, he goes, dude, you're right. It was like 45 minutes. He goes, I could have swore it was like a 5-minute stop, but it's like, I pump gas. My wife goes to the bathroom. She comes back out. I finish pumping gas. We move the car. Then it's like we have this debate of what we're going to eat. And he goes, it was about 45 minutes for our stop. And then he just put in an order for a Mach-E in March, and he's still waiting to get it built. But yeah. Slowly. I had to go through all of his, because it was also well, doesn't it just burn coal? And aren't they, they're so dirty to build the EV. So I had to go through it was about a phone call a month of explaining all of the myths away for him.
It's funny hearing you say that, because like on the Tesla side, we do that too. It's so funny. Like once you have an EV, like these conversations appear to be so common with folks that are not familiar with the industry. Actually, I see a comment in the comment section here. Have you all used your front drain plug yet in your car?
I saw that comment, and actually we haven't, but we saw someone use it this weekend at that sweet meetup that Patrick was talking about. I think it takes about 6 bags of ice to fill it, and it's not super insulated, so it does drain out pretty quickly. But he had a bunch of ice in there, a bunch of water, and I think it was still pretty icy for a couple hours.
Yeah, it stayed pretty well. Yeah, all of the frunks, I mean, that's where a lot of the cooling happens for the car. So it's not actually super insulated, so the ice will melt quickly. What I have found it beneficial for, and we haven't used it a lot for this, but like when we have leftovers at the restaurant, you just throw them in the frunk, and you don't have to worry about it. They stay warm. The smells stay confined, and if it spills, I know I can just hose it out. But normally, like what we like, we have those like camping chairs. So we put 3 camping chairs in the front, and
perfect length.
Yeah, we sort of keep them in there at all times, because like we'll go meet friends for whatever, like at the EV meetup, and it's like, well, we have 3 chairs ready.
So. Nice.
And that's
nice.
Okay. Like, what do people have in their frunk? Like, what's in your frunk?
It's like frunk puppies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, mine right now is a chess board and I think a board game that I haven't gotten out yet. I went to my brother's apartment like 2-3 weeks ago, and he was having like a board game night, and I'm pretty sure they're still in there. Guys, I forget. Like it's like a separate part of the car, and I'm like it's not like, for example, on the Model Y, I have the it's a hatchback, so I could always, if somebody's in the back seat, it's like, hey, can you check what's in the trunk real quick for me? But like the frunk, I still to this day forget I have a frunk, because I, coming from a gas car background, all of us have, like it's still a relatively new thing in car ownership, is like you have this entire different trunk that's part of the car.
I think that's why it's been nice having something that we just want to leave in the car, so we forget that the chairs are there until that moment when we're like, "Ha, we have chairs!" Yes.
Yeah, it's like a pleasant surprise. It's a self-inflicted pleasant surprise.
It is. Put an umbrella in there, because I've had a lot of like, "Oh, I need an umbrella" moments.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a front recommendation.
So I'm curious, what led you to the Mach-E? Maybe like help us understand your journey to discovering electric vehicles, your journey to coming across the Mach-E, maybe any other EVs you may have tested. Just kind of walk us through that journey, if you don't mind.
A lot of people won't believe this, but like I started, like I was a Tesla fan, and I still am. But like when the Roadster was out, like every time I saw a Roadster, like on work trips to California, I almost crashed, because I was like, oh my God, there's a Roadster, and I wanted to catch up to it or whatever. And then of course the Model S came out, big sedan, not for me, beautiful car. Of course, then the Model X came out, and I heard that was being announced. I'm like, oh, I'm sort of more of an SUV person, so that would be great. Too big of an SUV for me. Then the 3 came out, and I was really excited for that, because I had a Subaru WRX, and I see it as like it beats the Subaru WRX on like every check, but didn't need a car at the time. And then because like then Liv and I were in a relationship, we definitely need an SUV. She has a recumbent trike with an electric assist.
Like we wanted a car that could do everything, that could fit the trike. So that was kind of a big thing. It's a very large bicycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just like SUVs personally.
So yeah, she's an SUV person. So I started like, okay, now we're getting closer to the time, and the Y came out, and I'll just be honest, they made it like a fat Model 3, which I just didn't like the looks of it, but everything else checked all the boxes. So we were considering the Model Y, and then by the time we were getting ready to purchase, you start seeing like all the other things announced. And I grew up on Fords. I came home in a 65 Mustang, so I was excited by the Mustang. And then when I saw the unveiling of it, I loved the looks of it. So, I knew about the advantages of the supercharger network and the efficiency of the Model Y, but I was sold by the looks, and especially getting the tax credits. So it was sort of like looking at everything, and I felt confident because I've had a good run of Fords, and it's not a like I hated the Model Y. I would have bought the Model Y. Liv didn't like the looks of it either, so that sort of sealed the deal.
Well,
But
also, like, to be totally honest, I'm a used car person. I'm a cheap car person. I like my cars to be beat up already before I do it. So I wasn't really so into the whole brand new expensive car. But as we started getting into it, I just didn't think that a new shiny EV was something that we could have. But the tax incentives, the cost savings of EV over gas, all of that, and also honestly the community and the lifestyle just started to be really exciting. And it is like getting into the EV lifestyle is like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the way.
And
Yeah.
and so while we were waiting for the Mach-E, we did visit Tesla, take the Model Y out, and they gave us a performance which sort of spoiled us a little bit. But there were some little things besides the looks. People could call me a boomer or whatever, but I like some of my old dials and being able to control the air vents. The door handles are something that were a big issue for us because of Liv's injury. She has some dexterity issues. So the door handles made it difficult for entry and exit. And so some of those little things were just like elimination factors for us. But I still hated taking the performance Model Y back because that was so fun to drive. So it's just going with that. We stuck with the Mach-E. We've been really happy with it. We had some anxiety because of all the horror stories we've heard about Electrify America, and we've had some, but it's we haven't ever had an unsuccessful stop at a charging station. Feature wise, we love it. We're happy with Blue Cruise, contrary to like some of the stuff that's out there. It's been great.
And someone great chat, by the way. Your community is awesome here. Like, really,
yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, and everyone's just having some really great input. Someone asked what our favorite feature was, and I know what mine is now.
Which one?
Well, so we actually just switched from a first edition, basically a premium Mach-E, to a GT Performance Edition. Maybe from that back in time experience with the Performance Model Y, but I think Magna Ride is my favorite feature, but that's only now in the GT Performance.
And what's Magna Ride?
It's magnetic suspension. Patrick can explain it well.
A lot of Cadillacs. I believe you can get it on the Chevy Corvette and Camaro. It's and now in the Mustang and Mustang Mach-E. But basically, the suspension, the shocks can be the response of the shocks can be adjusted like hundreds of times per second because the fluid that's basically in the shocks is controlled by electronic magnets. So as it's reading the bumps in the road or that you're cornering, it can adjust the firmness of your shocks, and it's really phenomenal. And you can adjust in sort of like a chill ride mode, which is our whisper, then engage, which is normal, and unbridled, which is like a performance mode. So it's like you can stiffen up the suspension depending on what you're doing, and it's it even in like the performance mode, it handles like bumps quite a bit better than the regular Mach-E.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do know with Teslas and the Model Y and the Model 3 specifically, I think they all come with shocks, like just regular shock suspension. I think the performance ones are lowered a little bit. I don't know if they just compress the ones they use for all the cars, or they just have different shocks. I think the only ones that have magnetic rides are like the more expensive trims, the S and the X, that they run at least 100,000. So it's cool that they offer that you're able to get that sort of ride quality in where you don't have to spend $100,000 in an EV. So that's actually really cool. So that's Liv's favorite feature. What's yours, Patrick?
I was gonna say the Magna Ride, but
okay, it's taken.
So that's quite an exclusive favorite feature, though. That's just in the GT Performance Edition. So, what's a favorite feature that is just in every Mach-E?
It's, to me, a lot of it's the styling. So it's like, I know it's not a feature per se, but I love the styling of the Mach-E.
Sure.
And again, growing up on Mustangs, the tri-bar tail lights and the wide haunches in the back. I love that it may not be as aero as the Y, and it's definitely not as aero as the Y, but I love some of those little styling cues.
I actually totally agree with that. And I was thinking that too, because like it's so nice to have it's a great fortune to have a car that you walk up to, and every time you're like, "Hello,"
Yeah.
Looking good today.
Well, there's one feature, and it's sort of funny because it is one of our favorite features. I'll claim it for you as well, but it has the Mustang logo when you walk up to the car is projected onto the ground.
Yeah.
And it's so sweet. And it's like, we generally, because we called our car Lucifer after the blue Mustang statue at DIA at the airport. So we walk up to the car and we're like, "Hello, Lucifer," and it responds with the lights in the ground, and I just love that. And it's funny because there are a lot of people that will buy a Mach-E, and they've done all their research and whatever, and they'll get it home, and then like 2 weeks later, they'll walk up to it for the first time at night and go, "Oh my God."
And Robert in the chat mentioned that they should electrify the 65 Mustang. Funny you say that. We actually saw an electrified 65 Mustang this weekend, and it was super sweet.
Man.
Yeah. It was super awesome. We have an interview with them coming out.
And they had a Tesla motor in there, and instead of being mounted transversely, it was mounted like in line with the drive shaft. We're going to try to team up with them and do a video on that and take a more detailed look. But it's really cool. And then on the Mustang logo on the back, they did like the Mustang logo over the Tesla logo, so it's like combined the two. It was
nice,
really sweet build.
That's sick. That's pretty sick. I also saw somebody said a comment they love the blue. I've seen the blue on the Mustang in person. Man, that thing is sweet. Like they've done a really good job with the paint. It's a standout feature. I think like personally, I like the way the Mustang looks. I really do. I do think I prefer, for my taste, the Model Y. I prefer it, but the Mustang really looks good. But the paint stands out. They did such a good job with the paint, and it's so easy to catch. Like every time I'm on the road, like every other car blurs, but there's certain cars that stick out, and the blue Mustang sticks out every single time. I'm like, oh shit, there goes the Mustang. Oh shit, there goes the Mustang. They did a really good job with that paint.
And that really color, because we switched from a first edition to a GT, and people are like, "Are you going to switch colors?" We went with the Grabber blue again. Part of it is it's within Ford, that's an exclusive Mustang color. It's only ever been on the Mustangs, and it actually dates back to 1969 Mustang, where they first came out with that color. And it's like it's not available every year on the Mustang, so it's sort of special. And then it's usually just a solid color. And on the Mach-E, on the Mach-E, they made it metallic as well, so it really, really pops. And
yeah, I'm not normally a white car person, but even the white color, I think it's like 3 layers of paint, and it's very sparkly. So I like it.
Nice. Sparkles are good. There's a question from Donald. How have you guys experienced like cabin noise and the quietness? So how would you rate the sort of the quietness of the ride in the Mustang?
Pretty quiet, and we've been in numerous cars lately. It's not Mercedes EQS.
That's forever the high standard of absolute silence. And then I was trying to think I think it's the Mach-E after that.
It's fairly close. It's up there. It's quieter than the like Model Y or Polestar inside, and I think some of that is down to like what tires you're on and even what road you're on. But it feels like it's fairly quiet in there. And a lot of this is editing videos as we do our little road tests, and then we have to go back and try to do some noise cancellation so you can hear us talking. It's very easy in the EQS and in the Mach-E, and the Rivian was pretty quiet as well.
Ish. It had some wind
Yeah.
noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Rivian
Yeah.
had some wind noise, and I'm trying to think. I think the ID4 probably had the most road noise, but nothing's bad. Everything's better than my 98 RAV4. So like, we have the whole breadth of stuff. Yeah, there hasn't been an EV that we've gotten in that's been like, oh, this is very noisy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially compared to the gas cars, like that same in the same price range, like the EV will always be quieter than the gas car 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless they have like some insane tire choice that like they pick the worst tire in the world, you know?
Yeah.
I can tell you with so we have a performance Model Y actually, and it rides on the, I think the 21. I forget I think they're 21s. The tires, but you can hear the tires because they're they're low profile, they're wider, they're sporty tires. But I would say for me that is by far the biggest noise that I hear in my car. Still way quieter than a gas car in the same price range. But that tire noise is what really leaks through. But that's what I paid for. I wanted the performance, so that's what I get. It's like one of those trade-offs that you get with those things.
And there's a difference with the premium Mach-E was quieter than the GT that we have now, and a lot of it's due to the tires.
Yeah.
Wider tires, stickier tires.
I think it says a lot that the road noise is normally drowned out by the sounds of your engine. So that we can talk about this at all is probably a good sign. And Donald asks if there are fairly inexpensive used Mach-E's. Funny you should say that. We just traded in our premium first edition. We made money on it, which helped us buy our GT Performance Edition. So nice. No, they're not inexpensive used Mach-E's. We even was a space white one that popped up on the market, was at MSRP, which is super rare. We put a shout out, Patrick did. We had like 12 people asking about it. It was gone instantly.
Wow.
And that was at MSRP. So you're definitely not getting deals on Mach-E.
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot with, like, I know for the last year we've had a lot of with the craziness with inflation and the used car market and all that craziness, but I'm seeing that EVs in particular are holding their value really, really, really well. It's not just a Tesla or a Mach-E thing, like unless you're talking about, like, I know the Bolts had a lot of issues with like their batteries, or like there's certain cars that have had some issues when it comes to retaining value, but most EVs seem to be doing really well and holding their value. I'm happy to hear that Mach-E is as well. The cute little question here, Liv, we must know, what's your accent? Where are you from?
I've been watching the comments and I love that no one has gotten it. I feel like I shouldn't say.
Put your best guess in the comments. Let's see.
Yeah, if it comes in the comments.
Yeah.
Someone said a word earlier in regards to EV camping, which is specific to the location that I'm from. I happen to notice that. I know that I've been reading the comments. Someone said that word in regards to camping. That may be a clue. Boston.
Boston.
I'm not going to say anything.
We'll reveal soon.
Yeah.
Okay. This is like the funnest part.
I know you have to keep watching to know. Speaking of camping,
we
did camp in the Mach-E.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, we were testing out a mattress, which wasn't great. So
it's actually from Tasmania.
Probably, it was Model Y sized, which is probably why, it should have been wider for us.
Well, that's weird because I think the Model Y interior is actually wider, but this mattress wasn't quite as wide as the Mach-E. So I was like, I don't know why it was. Anyways, but we went camping. It was actually sort of cool. It was like an all electric camping trip. So we had a Lightning, Rivians. 2 Rivians, and the Mach-E. We should not have been out there because it was down a really, really rough dirt road where I literally. We won't say. Well, I can say it now because I've already sold the car, but I scraped the bottom. So,
oh shit!
Yeah.
I hope he's not watching.
Yeah, exactly. It did not damage anything. I crawled under. Right.
Superficial, yeah.
But yeah, it was sort of cool, and it was Kyle with out of spec, so he brought his Starlink setup, and so we were like out in the middle of nowhere, had satellite, and I thought it was just so cool. Like here we have EVs and Starlink, and it's just like forefront of technology.
Yeah.
Sleeping in the back of the Mach-E was fine. We don't have a camping mode, which is silly.
The temperature was very nice outside, so that probably contributed to it. If we were trying to moderate the temperature inside, I don't think it would have been great.
Well, I
Camping
mean,
mode
there's
would be
people
good.
were getting around that and getting around the lack of dog mode, but or pet mode, but it's something silly like Ford should just, it should be an easy addition. Rivian added it. You know, people were like, "Hey, can you guys do a dog mode?" And then like 2 weeks later, they had a dog mode. I don't.
Yeah.
Do y'all get software updates through the Mach-E as well? Like, do they come in?
do.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
so we've gotten you know, some of them are minor. Like we got tic-tac-toe, and you're like, "Ooh, boy, this is sort of
Did
embarrassing."
play it for 15 minutes though.
Our Blue Cruise was activated via over there update. Things like we got an update to our charging curve because the Mach-E had a sort of infamous cliff at 80% where it dropped to 11 kilowatts charging. We got the update over the air, and then it's 43 kilowatts where it slows down to 80%. So, good updates like that, but you're also like, why just flip a switch and we can have dog mode or camp mode or whatnot.
Yeah. Is there a place for owners to sort of, because Tesla doesn't really have that either. It's just kind of the community, like the Twitter. You just tweet Elon, can you put this in a software? Sometimes you'll say sure. There's forums and stuff like that. But does Ford have some sort of place where you could submit suggestions and they can take it to the mothership? How does that work?
So there's a way to like report errors in the sync system so that you can say like, hey, this isn't working, but it's sort of vague. It's sort of like you just tap a button and I don't know how much feedback because I've never actually done that part, but they do reach out to people to do surveys. And I know a couple of people, and there's also an early access program that we used to be in with our old car, but the new GT hasn't been enrolled in that. And with that, they'll roll out an update, and then we'll get a survey that says like, how was the update? And I know I got one that was like asking like what features would we like to see, and of course it was like mentioning like games. I'm like, I could care less about games, although I know a lot of people want games. With the processor power in the Mach-E, they're not going to be anything great. So
gotcha.
Can you give me dog mode?
Give them dog mode, damn it. Liv, did anyone guess your accent yet? Did you see your?
Should we tell them? Should we?
You want to tell? It's up to you.
Yeah. Okay, South Africa.
Yeah. I knew it. I knew it.
And Cindy called out one of the best things. The second best thing about South Africa is peri peri chicken, which is actually Portuguese, but it's like a South African recipe. It's so delicious. I agree, it's the best. But also there's biltong.
Yeah, of course.
Have you experienced it?
We actually have one of my best friend's wives is from South Africa, and we went to South Africa for their wedding. So we were in Cape Town, Grobo. Like we were in like the Western Cape of the country. We had biltong. We had a braai, right? Not a barbecue. Yep. We had a braai. Yeah. It was beautiful. It was one of the. We went to Stellenbosch. We went to a bunch of different places. Such a gorgeous country. My God. It's absolutely stunning. But yeah, I had biltong in South Africa, and it was freaking incredible.
Legit biltong. Yeah, if you have the opportunity to have some, it's a staple. Yeah, and the peri peri chicken.
Yeah. It's funny because once I heard your accent, I'm like, I know exactly where she's from, but I just wanted to build the suspense. Cool. Of course.
I think it sounds super weird. So I told, like, when people say Boston or East Coast, I'm like, yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, I don't know what's happened, but I can hear it.
And speaking of South Africa, we went there earlier this year to visit her gran, who's turned 100.
Whoa!
So, but we still tried to do some EV stuff while we were there. And it's sort of interesting because we talk about the EV revolution, and we talk about like the new tax credits that are here in the U.S. It actually costs more to buy EV there because they tax them higher, and they tax imported vehicles as well. And then there's no charging stations or hardly any. We found 2.
And I think because like it's imported, so if it's over a certain amount, it becomes a luxury vehicle, which then gets taxed more. So it's really prohibitive.
So like a Mini, a Mini Cooper, for example, I think here, like with the tax credits, would be like 27,000 or something like that. Over there, it's going to be like 57,000 or some ridiculous number. And then we were looking at like how many EVs are actually even over here. And I think from 2013 until end of 2021, they had like 180 total EVs.
Total.
Yeah. So it's really
Wow.
great to see what's happening in Europe, in China, in the US. But countries like South Africa, it's like, how are we going to
Yeah.
make it so they're not left out of this?
For sure. I've been thinking about that a lot. The EV movement kind of reminds me a little bit of sort of the transition to cell phones in a way. Like especially if I'm thinking about like South Africa is and it's in the top tier of countries in the world. So they have infrastructure, they have the economy, they have the capability of really driving the EVs forward, but they just need to kind of figure out the importing. Maybe they have to localize production sometime down the road. So maybe Ford or Tesla or whoever needs to start building factories in South Africa so they can actually create, build the cars locally so that they, bypass all those import taxes. So hopefully that happens. But I'm thinking like globally, there's such a huge chance for a lot of these countries to bypass really going heavy into gas cars and just going electric with solar. Because you think about what's the location of a lot of these countries. A lot of them get a lot of sun. They get a lot of sun. So why not use some sort of electric battery system or solar and batteries to harness the energy you need to power these cars long term? And I think in the next 20 to 40 years, I think there's a huge opportunity for that. And companies like Ford and Tesla and whoever else is getting into the EV game, like they can really capitalize from that and really enter those markets hardcore. And I'm hoping that happens. I see that as a potential opportunity. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts around that, but I've been thinking about that quite a bit.
Yeah, that's something that we covered over there because they actually do have a lot of grid problems. So they do what they call load shedding, which is like rolling blackouts, as we call them here. And here it's like it makes them the news because rolling blackouts are such a disruption. There, it's almost like, well, yeah, this is what we're going to be doing for load shedding for the next couple of months, and people just sort of get used to it. And it's you'll get scheduled to have 8 hours of load shedding over the next 3 days, and that would be a huge disruption for us. So in addition to doing like things like bringing in solar over there, then if you also have your transportation is also a battery that could also power your house while there is load shedding, it could be huge. And when I sort of presented that to some people that were in South Africa, at first they were like, yeah, we can't do EVs because we have load shedding. I was like, yeah, but what if that during load shedding your EV powered your house? And they're like,
exactly,
they can do that. And I was like, they're getting there, certain vehicles already, but they're getting there. And that would be like a huge advantage for a lot of people, I think. And, and again, it's sort of like you're talking about like cell phones. They start Europe, China, Japan, those areas. But when they get into other portions of the world, all of a sudden it unlocks other potential that we never thought of here in the US because we just don't have some of the same issues. And as revolutionary as cell phones and the internet is here, in some portions of the world, it was tenfold that because they actually have access to information. I mean, even like I know some parts of like rural Colorado, it opened up so much more because you get access to so much. And I think EVs, solar, Starlink, it's all of that is going to be huge, and we've only begun to imagine the potential.
Yeah. Where do you see the EV industry in, say, like by 2030? Like, do you guys think about that a lot? Like, do you think about the transition? How do you envision this thing moving forward?
Like I said, we got into doing the Mach-E vlog and our videos and all of this is to document our own journey. And at some point, it was like clicking with us. It's like, oh my God, this is like a bucking bronco, and we're on for the ride of our lives. I think there are some optimistic projections of where we can be. And, some days I look at it and I go like, I don't know where we're going to get the resources to do this. But then the other days it's, we were just talking about friend after friend is like, my next EV is going to be, or my next car is going to be an EV. And I think the industry will find a way to meet this demand and need. And I think we're going to be ahead of a lot of these projections and goals, just because when you had 1% market penetration, you'd have a few people try an EV and then they go, oh yeah, I think I want one of those, but I have worries and questions. But we're reaching that threshold to where so many more people, it's increasing exponentially, getting exposed to EVs and understanding how great they are. It's just going to drive it faster and faster. And
Hmm.
you know, there are big hurdles for companies like Ford and GM and VW. Tesla is showing how they can scale quickly, but I think it's going to take Legacy's efforts to scale as well, and they'll find a way. I
Hmm.
don't know how,
Mhm.
and there are some companies that are lagging significantly, um, but hopefully they'll all find a way.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I feel like it's so exciting being in this and sharing our passion with people and hearing so many more people say my next car will be an EV. That's so exciting and it's so fun. And then it's also very overwhelming to think to 2030. Um, in so many ways, like how we can handle this, how companies are going to handle this, how the grid will handle it. I don't know, and sometimes it's like, oh, hope we're going to be okay. But I feel like a great deal of innovation happens under pressure, and that pressure is starting. And there are very smart people on the task, thankfully. So I am putting faith in those people. And in this expanding industry, and we've probably got like really smart people going to school now for this stuff who will now
Yeah.
soon be contributing to this industry, and it's just going to keep exploding more as more pressure is put on it. So sometimes I'm like, ooh, I don't know how it's going to be, but also I think maybe it'll
Yeah.
be a diamond. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I can tell you the one conversation that I'm always I'm like plugged into these different groups of folks within the Tesla community that are also like investors, and they're really interested in the movement of the industry forward, and how that, what are the implications to the stock and the company and the industry and so on and so forth. And the thing that everybody keeps coming back to is like, do we have enough nickel? Do we have enough lithium? Like the raw material, like the mining and the supply that needs to be there. It still seems like, at least at present day, the scaling efforts required to say get to 50% plus new EVs per year. Like saying, you say you sell 100 million cars total, 50 million of those are going to be EVs. Like, how the hell are we going to do that?
Yeah,
Like the raw materials are not available today, and there doesn't seem to be a clear path to get there. So I think a lot of people are afraid that there's going to be this, they call it the valley of death. They call it the valley of death, where the transition from EVs to gas cars, you're going to get into a situation where, as the people that we've talked to, and I want to ask you a question about this in a little bit, but as the people that we've talked to are starting to say, my next car is an EV, I'm really getting, warmed up to the EV, but there's not going to be EVs for them to buy. And then if they're going to stop buying the gas cars, then what's going to happen to the companies that are selling the gas cars? Like it becomes a really weird dynamic that's going to go down. And I can tell you, within the Tesla community, there's been discussions around, say, companies like your Toyotas or your, we'll even throw GM in there for the sake of this conversation. There doesn't seem to be, at present day, there's no clear pathway for them, or they're not at least being super, let's say, realistic about their approach in really scaling up electric vehicles. And there's a lot of fear that, maybe I shouldn't use the word fear, but I'm going to use the word fear because I'm legitimately afraid for those companies that they're not going to be around for very long. Because if they're not able to really scale their processes and their electric vehicles as quickly as humanly possible, people are not just going to they're not going to want to buy gas cars. They'll just wait for the EV, however long it takes. I'm curious if you have any thoughts around that, but like we think about that a lot on our side of the EV world a little bit. But I'm curious to hear if y'all are thinking
yeah.
about that too.
Well, and people, I'll have these conversations on Twitter where it's like, legacy is just going to die, and I see where that's coming from, because if you look back when the Japanese imports first came, and a lot of American companies, the big three, struggled to make that transition to make, affordable, smaller, more efficient vehicles. And that was basically staying in their safe zone. You know what I mean? It was like, it wasn't like this technology revolution that they had to go through. And all three of them almost died because of that. And now we're talking about, it's a completely different mindset, it's completely different resource. They need to work on vertical integration. They need to work on new technology, not in just propulsion, but in driver's assistance systems. So there are so many things that they have to juggle just right to survive the transition. I fear for all of them. VW, Ford, I think, are doing a better job than let's say GM and Toyota.
100%.
But there's no guarantee that that's going to be enough. And I don't think it's like they would disappear or something like that. But I could see there's going to be mergers and divisions collapsed and whatnot. But it still goes back to overall, like no matter what, there's a certain number of cars that are being sold every single year. And whether it's Tesla and Rivian and BYD, or legacy, there's still a lot of resources that have to be found and have to be mined, have to be processed. And how that all happens, that's why it's like I love thinking about it, but if I dig into it too much, it's like overwhelming for me. And that's where I'm like, the guys that are making 7 figures a year, they can worry about that, because and it goes back to like it's like somebody said, well, what, aren't you worried Ford's going to go bankrupt in 10 years? I'm like, what does that matter about the car that's in my garage?
Exactly.
It's like, I'm going to drive my car, I'll probably be rid of it by then. So short term, I'm focused on those type of things, because that's, I need to get from point A to point B. My electric car does that, but I do worry about the big picture and how are we going to make that transition. And then on the other side of it too, is like the grid. I dispel some of the myths about the grid is, just going to collapse because of what's happening in like Texas and whatnot. But there does need to be a lot of improvements in our grid. We just met with a company the other day that was talking about working with energy providers, because they're not used to having these large loads on the grid at night, or in a neighborhood when all of a sudden now in the middle of the night, there's a ton of electricity being pulled. Like how does that get improved? And again, they want to survive as well. So, they have people working on this.
Yeah. It's gonna be fascinating to watch. I've been critical of certain companies, so I'll be completely transparent. I'm not a huge fan of how a company like GM is approaching the transition. Definitely not thrilled about Toyota. They're like certain. I'll be transparent. Like I love the ownerships and I love the vehicles, and I love like the GMC Hummer. I want to see one in person so bad, because that looks so obnoxious. I want one so bad. It's 9,000 pounds. Who the fuck needs a 9,000 pound car? I do, because it's obnoxious. It's like, it's cool. It's cool. But I always separate that from overall business strategy and overall corporate strategy. And that's where I think sometimes that gets lost in translation with some folks. I'm like, I'm not criticizing the vehicles themselves. I'm criticizing like how quickly they can scale. Like, are you taking this seriously enough? Because there's a chance for this to really, like, there's going to be potentially hundreds of thousands of people that are going to lose their jobs. And that's what I'm really truly worried about, is like an economy that's not going to be able to sustain this transition. That's where my head goes to. Now, I am optimistic by nature. And I think what Liv said around, pressure makes diamonds, 100%. Like sometimes that's the thing we need. We need that fire on our asses to really get those things going. But, and the reason why I even reached out in the first place was, I became a really big fan of what Jim Farley and Ford are doing. Like it's obvious that Ford is thinking about the future, and they're doing the right things to get there, especially as a company that's been around for as long as they have. They were the only automaker in the US in 2008 that didn't file for bankruptcy during that crazy thing, which shows that they know what they're doing. If you've been around for that long, they've shown that they can reinvent themselves over time. And I'm like, holy shit, Ford is doing it. Like, they're doing it. The Mach-E looks great in person. Everybody who's seen or driven the F-150 Lightning, they're huge fans of it. These are signs of a legacy company that's been around for a long time, that is doing the right things to move to the next stage, and hopefully they make it through. I think their chances are better than not at this point, given all the things they have with their, the gas factories and everything. But they're they're doing it. They're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing that should be celebrated and should be like, yo, this is freaking awesome. And the fact that they have owners like yourselves that are happy with their cars and they really love their experience, like this is great. Like let's celebrate this. And hopefully a Toyota or a Honda or whoever else is like, holy shit, maybe we should do that too, because there's people out there that want this kind of product, and them just standing idly by is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. So that's where I get passionate, and that's why I think like that's what attracted me to Tesla in the first place. I'm like, okay, like we have a company that's being really serious about, hey, let's move it forward. And I'm seeing Jim Farley and Ford kind of driving the same narrative, and I'm like, cool, like finally we got some momentum going, and that's very encouraging.
Yeah, and it's sort of funny. Like I think some of the success of the Mach-E and the Lightning has created this animosity from certain segments of like, why are they always mentioning Tesla, and what Ford is going to die, and Tesla is beating them. They got so much market share, and I'm like, I see it as like it's a compliment. If when Mike Levine or Jim Farley are mentioning Tesla and taking digs at Tesla,
sure,
I think that's if I were a Tesla owner, I'd be like, yeah, that's right.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
And it's because of the position that Tesla is in of, if you would have said 10 years ago, the CEO of Ford is going to be taking digs at Tesla because of their success, I think everybody been like, I'll take that. That's great. Like that's
100%.
That's awesome of where Tesla is at now. And then of course it's also like, well, you should be thankful of Tesla. I was like, I am, because if it wasn't for Tesla, there would probably be a Ford EV being produced, but I think it would be an E-scape compliance vehicle that was originally slated to be what the Mach-E is. But right. Ford, I think, out of the legacy manufacturers, and I think VW is doing some good stuff as well, but like American EV or legacy EV manufacturers, they basically said we're going to go big or go home, versus the other Stellantis / Chrysler and GM. GM is I love the Bolt. I've recommended the Bolt to a lot of people that come to us and say like, I can't afford an EV. Have you looked at a Bolt? And
I kind of want one.
Liv was suspecting one.
Yeah,
they're such a great value.
Yeah,
but it still feels like that they were just trying to like, okay, here's all of our great cars, and then here's this Bolt. And I'm like, if they would have like switched that role, I think they could be in a way better position right now. And then they do come out with something like the Hummer, and like you said, it's like Hummers. That's just fantastic, but it's like we need to see some follow through by GM.
Right.
And
Scale.
Yeah, they got to scale that up. I think the Silverado is going to be super impressive. I'm excited to see that when it comes out. And as I talked about a couple of times on our channel, is like I grew up in North Carolina. Like half my friends and family were Ford truck family, and the other half was Chevy truck family. few oddball Dodge or whatever. But I think it's sort of like, okay, maybe this is what Chevy needed, is like, okay, Ford has the Lightning. It's like, oh crap, we got to do a Silverado, get those rivalries going. And then Tesla's going to have the Cybertruck. And then it's like, how are they going to respond to that? And, I think it's going to be, a lot of it's going to be a completely different market for the Cybertruck. And that's fine.
Yeah.
There's room for a lot of people. And that's the way I look at it. A lot of this competition rivalry stuff is, we sometimes look at it as, winner take all. It will never be that way in the automotive industry. It's going to be, you love the look of your Model Y. I love the look of the Mach-E. You know what I mean? It's like you might like a red car. I like a blue car. You know what I mean? So it's
exactly
like, we're always going to have different preferences, and that's just the way it's going to be. And there's room for a lot of people at this EV world.
And it's also beyond preferences, because it's needs, because like the F-150 Lightning and then the Silverado, these are essential utility tools, and that really needed to fill the market. Like there was a space there that had to happen. So we need some more of that, some more variety in EVs. Like I'm excited to see automakers bringing variety instead of just like.
I mean, if I needed a truck like we would have been tempted to trade in the Mach-E for the F-150 Lightning because I think they've done a better job with the thermal management. It's quick. They did a Mach-E versus Lightning drag race, and the Mach-E won by like a car length, which is insane, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
I would be very tempted to switch to a Lightning, but we just don't need it. And
but it's so useful. It's like so much more. There's so much more that you could do with it than the Mach-E, which we have no use for. But it's like, wow, it can do that. Like, you know, plug in.
You almost want to like find an excuse to like use it, you know?
100%. Yeah. Like,
well, it's like the Rivian.
Open a...
I've seen so many Rivians for as few as they've sold in, you know, big picture terms. I've seen a lot here in Colorado. And it's like the perfect Colorado vehicle. It's sort of, it does well on your day-to-day commute. Then when you want to go have some fun in the canyons, just driving fast, you can like lower it and put it in sport mode, and it's powerful enough, like not an issue. And then you go, okay, now let's go camping for a bit, go in off-road mode. I'm like, it's like an ideal vehicle. We don't go off-roading or camping or anything like that. So it's not for us, but that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's so true. Go ahead, Liv.
Oh, well, someone commented earlier about the Polestar 6. Roadster. And I was like, oh, that could be a nice car. So I looked into it this morning, and it was $25,000 to reserve it. So then I closed that tab.
Let me pull it up for those that are not familiar with what we're talking about. This thing looks sick.
It really, I think
it's so sexy.
Yeah, it really is. Like, yeah.
They're only going to make like 200 or something like that to begin with. Like $200,000. Yeah,
it's like 200,000. Look at that thing.
That's gorgeous. That's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
The design language that they use for this car is stunning.
Yeah.
I'll never buy it because it's $200,000. But it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
They did a really good job with that. Yeah.
Like this aesthetic could trickle into other areas, you know, like the Buick Wildcat, making you look up another thing. Hopefully that'll trickle it. You know, these concept cars that are really outlandish. The Roadster little brother. Yeah.
I think what's interesting about what y'all just talked about is that car ownership is such a reflection of people's individuality, right? It's like it's super subjective. It's what people like, hey, I think that's beautiful. Like, I think that's great. And other people don't. And I think sometimes that gets lost. Like I've seen that in our community, in the Tesla community a little bit, is that, you know, I think some folks just get, like I don't want to use the word stuck, but I guess I'll use the word stuck. They get they get stuck on the wall. Yeah, the Supercharger network. Yes, you can make the argument that it's the best charging network. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Efficiency, yes. Performance, yes. Software, yes. Like there's many different things that we can talk about that the Tesla does really well. But what it really comes down to is preference. And Tesla can have a world where they can sell, you know, they can be 10, even let's even call it 20% of the market in a very, very awesome scenario. That's still 80%. Like Tesla can reach its incredible lofty goals that the Tesla community think it can, and you still have a gigantic marketplace for people that don't want that. People that want something else. And that's the beautiful thing about where we are now is like Tesla can be quote unquote dominant, and there's still so much more market for everyone else, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a good place to be in. That's a great place to be in.
That's where I'm like I wish Tesla all the success, and I, you know, may be in a Tesla, but you know, my next car, who knows?
Right.
But there's also so much more room. It's like I would be sad not to see the ID Buzz on the road, you know?
Me too, man.
It's like we sat in one at the New York Auto Show and got to take a little tour of it. It's so cool. It's like it's a freaking minivan that I want, which is unreal.
I know.
And again, it's like I won't buy one, but if we didn't see that on the road, I would I would be, that would be a loss if that doesn't make it to the street.
This interesting stuff, and Tesla doesn't have to make it. It doesn't have to make every car for everyone. We want every automaker to succeed and to bring new variety. Like variety is so great. These options. Another car that like we have no need for, and we were both like, but could we use this for something?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah, that's
I remember when I saw the concept pictures for this car, like I was like super deep into Tesla at that time, and I saw this. I'm like, holy shit, Volkswagen, yes, 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 yes,
yeah.
please, quick, bring this to market. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
cool. And I mean, we like Colorado isn't as bad as California for the number of EVs on the road, but it's getting up there. And it's like
Or it's good. Yeah.
or good. It's
Good.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't as good as California for the number of EVs, but it's so much fun going down the road and going, whatever it is, even from the
Yeah.
Nero, like we saw E-Nero actually on the street right out by our house. I was like, oh my God, E-Nero, and turning my neck. And then the other day we went and got coffee, and there was an original Tesla Roadster that I snapped a picture
yeah.
of.
Nice.
That was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
I love the variety. And it reminds me, like a lot of people, especially like the Tesla community, because there's a lot of cool like raps and stuff that people do. And it's always, is it dope or nope? And I'm always, it's dope. Like, even if I don't like it, it's cool. Like,
Yeah.
that's an ugly, ugly color, but it's dope that you did that.
And only ugly color to you.
Yeah.
And by the way, someone's
Right.
asking if anyone's interested in Aptera, and I actually have a reservation because
Nice.
wow, that's so weird. Yes, if that comes out on the market, yes, I want to drive that. That's weird,
Yeah.
And it can get. I think I reserved the 400 miles. It was a while ago. Yeah, look how weird that is. It's so weird.
It's so weird.
And
I love
it's
it.
great. Like, let's do some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think the other thing too is like, you mentioned competition. Like, competition is such a good forcing function for the consumer, because now we benefit from that competition. Like people that make the argument, like there's an argument Tesla has no competition. Okay, cool. But imagine, like, even in that world, imagine if it did. Like, how much better could Tesla be? And how much better could Ford be? And how much better could GM be and Toyota? Like, all these, like, imagine bringing up Tesla bringing in the Mach-E, and they're like, yo, look at what it does better than the Model Y. We need to get better at this. We need to get, I think it's such a great forcing function. And then we as the consumers end up winning. It's such a beautiful thing that happens. It's really, really cool. A couple more questions, if I may, and I've been meaning to ask you this for a while. How have you seen your immediate circle of, like, say, friends and family, like the people that you've sort of talked to? How has the tone changed around wanting to buy EVs? And you made a little comment around that, but has that changed drastically in, say, the last 2 to 3 years? Have you noticed a big change?
I think so.
I mean, part of it is that we're so vocal about it that people who previously have access to easy information, because it's intimidating. And I think that was part of why, like, Patrick started the channel by himself, and then I got into it. And part of the fun is that it's so intimidating and it's so new, and in the beginning. And like, I want to be able to be here to allow people to ask the questions that are stupid. There are no stupid questions. Like, it's all new. We make mistakes publicly on camera. We're very authentic in the learning process. And like, I think that the people around us saw that happening and started to realize that, oh, this is a resource. We can ask you guys questions. So we've had a lot of people more open to this, asking questions. We've had tons of friends now putting reservations in and saying, do you think I can get this? Like, can I put this in my house? How will I do it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's spreading. I'm sure you had that too. Like,
100%.
like everyone that wasn't into EVs is now in your community.
Yeah. And so two parts to this. Like, we have like, some friends that we're like super happy about, that have been calling me and asking me about EV questions and solar questions, which I don't know enough about, but they just got their solar system installed, and now they have a reservation for F-150 Lightning, and they're waiting to be able to put their order in, but they're like, we're ready to go. So it's like exciting to see that level of enthusiasm and action. But the frustrating part is we still have a lot of friends that complain about the cost of EVs, and I can't afford an EV. I always buy used, and I'm glad that the new tax credit has the $4,000 credit for used EVs, although it destroyed some other credits for like the Korean companies, for example. But affordability is something that I'm hoping that Tesla and the other manufacturers start addressing. I know VW was even talking about like they're shifting more and more to higher end vehicles, and I'm like, I would love to be able to tell my friends that are looking to spend $25,000 for a car. Like there's so many different options, and Liv is a fan of lower cost cars, and
Very much
that's
so.
why like we're looking at a used EV like an i3 or something like that. Because it's like we also want to prove like, yeah, you can do a lower cost.
And also, we're very city people. Like you've heard multiple times, we're not really into camping and all that. We
Right.
do go on road trips, and like the Mach-E is a very suitable road trip vehicle. But a lot of the driving that I do is around the city. It's like 10 miles here and there. So that's another segment of the market where we have car makers pushing for longer range and things like that. But 100 miles, making it more affordable, more accessible to people, whatever it is. We need something more there. Like, because what do we have now? The Mini Cooper SE, which is kind of like a quirky niche sort of thing, or the Bolt. But even that gets quite a bit of range.
And going back to lower costs is also usually will result in lower range, which people are resistant to. But I think that helps our EV transition if we can get people out of the mindset of like, I gotta drive. Like I'm not, because one that I hear so often is like, I'm not buying an EV until it has 500 miles of range. I'm like, you're literally going to be carrying around thousands of pounds of battery.
Yeah, you're not going to use it.
Probably use twice a year.
Yeah.
It's such a different way of thinking about like distances and it's not intuitive, I think, still for a lot of folks, that a bigger range doesn't mean a better EV. Like your weight example is perfect. It's like for every additional mile of battery you're trying to add to the thing, there is the equation of it's heavier, and when it's heavier, it gets lower range. So you got to offset it with more batteries. It's like it's just like spiral,
And the low range really has to be paired with an affordable price tag for these city cars that we want a lot of people to be using, reducing emissions in the cities. That would be so great.
Yeah. My brother, he ordered his Mach-E, and he was debating whether to go for the extended range or the standard range. And I sort of talked to him and talked to like how he was going to use it. And he's like basically may go on 100-mile each way trip in his Mach-E that he's going to buy. But he's like, if we're doing a longer road trip, we're going to take my wife's SUV. And, I'm not going to change his mind on that. That's what he and she are going to do. So I'm like, yeah, just go with the standard range. If that's all you're doing. And he's like he's retired. So he's like 95% of his trips are like 5 miles here and there. And I'm like, yeah, definitely. Just go with the standard range. You'll be fine. And he has standard range rear wheel drive. So it's like still like 240 miles of range.
Nice. Yeah. I really hope the scaling of the supply gets to a point where we have more and more companies that can create true affordable EVs that the mass can purchase. And we're probably still, I'm gonna guess, like 2 to 3 years out from that becoming a true reality, like the beginnings of that reality. But I'm hoping once it kicks into high gear, gear, because a lot of people will really benefit from that. The one thing, and maybe we'll use this topic to close out the stream. The one thing we haven't touched on yet that I think are big topics, especially as it relates to non-Teslas, is Blue Cruise and Electrify America. So tell us everything about that, because I'm super interested to hear your perspective.
Let's do Electrify America first. We've had hit or miss. Like when we first got the Mach-E, it had plug-in charge, but it just did not work with Electrify America, or it did, but it would error out. That was fixed after about the first month. Since then, we've had good experiences mostly. Although, like we're traveling routes and we plug in at like Green River, Utah, there's 4 stalls, 2 are down. We're fine because we're the only car there. We get the, one of the other 2. I have like a magic superpower. Like I'll pull into a charging station and I will pull into the one that's not working. The one stall that's not working. So I have had to move a few times. And I have issues like with Electrify America. They do this thing, like they put the logo on the screen for like 30 seconds and then they put not available on the screen for 30 seconds. And I'm like, why? Like, could you just say not available so I don't get out and like as I'm walking to the station, I see that it's not working. But we've had really, really good experiences for the most part. We've gone to San Diego. We did the race to Vegas with Out of Spec Studios, Santa Fe. Pretty good experience with Electrify America for us. My biggest issue with Electrify America isn't with them. Well, I guess it is. It's with all the deals they're doing with like VW and Polestar and Hyundai giving out free charging, because like now we're starting to run into people, and it's even more so in California, where people have charging at home or they could charge at home, but it's like they don't because they have free charging and they're like clogging up the charging stations. So that's my biggest issue. They're having some reliability issues, I know, and that's due to some part supplies. So the main thing is like we need better coverage and we need more of them, and the 4 stalls is not going to be enough. They need to start expanding to 6 stalls, 8 stalls. Blue Cruise, it's sort of weird because I don't like the naming of how they've done it, because people confuse Blue Cruise with their Copilot 360 stuff. But basically it's been great. Like we didn't get it until, what was it? April of this year. But before that, we had the intelligent cruise control with lane centering, which is really sort of description wise similar to basic autopilot. Doesn't do lane changes and handles steering as long as it can detect lanes. That was okay. It does fairly well on the freeways, but it was, you go into some curves and it was choppy and not great on like country roads and stuff like that with a lot of curves. Not great in most city type locations because it's not detecting stoplights and whatever. So I didn't use it much for that. But on the freeway, interstate, it was great. And then Blue Cruise took it up another level. I've been really happy with that. It does hands-free, but to be honest, most of the time I rest my hand on the steering wheel anyways. Sandy Monroe did a video and showing like, oh my God, it canceled on a curve. It doesn't cancel. What it does is it just says, put your hands back on the steering wheel because it's a sharp curve. And it's sort of, and to be honest, I fault Tesla for this, of like getting everybody thinking of like the car drives itself. It's like the car doesn't drive itself. It may handle steering, but you're the driver, the driver's assistance. Every single system out there is a driver's assistance. You still need to be in control. So as we're going through like the Colorado mountains, it's super curvy, of course, on I-70. Blue Cruise is on, and it goes through the sharper curves, and it's like, put your hands on the steering wheel. And I'm like, I understand the mentality is like, if it cancels for any reason, something clogs the camera or whatever, by the time you get your hands back up there, you're going to be into a wall. So it's like, put your hand on the steering wheel as we're doing this. It's still steering. It's still smooth. It's still, watching out in front of it and all of that good stuff. So we've been happy with it. So as a good comparison for like an autopilot type system, it's great.
Okay. Got it. Does Ford advertise it as hands-free or is it just they do? Okay.
Yeah, they do. It's basically Super Cruise and Blue Cruise, Super Cruise from GM and Ford. They advertise it as hands-free, and it's very clear when it is in hands-free mode.
Okay. That was going to be my follow-up question. Yeah.
So okay. It's very clear. And what sort of like what a lot of people don't like about it is like when it reverts back to hands-on, it's very clear about it, but it doesn't make like an audible noise. And the reasoning is, I believe, is that it's just like with autopilot, like you can go like 10 seconds, 15 seconds without your hands on the steering wheel. So it's like, hey, put your hands on there. If you don't do it in that time, then it makes an audible noise. But a lot of people look at it as like, it switched off hands-free and didn't get an audible warning. And I'm like, yeah, because it's not like an alert where you have to grab it immediately. One of the things I have to say that I like about Blue Cruise and the intelligent cruise control the best, even though we have to handle our own lane changes, like peons or whatever. The way it does it, I think, is great. And I've tried several like Rivian and whatnot. And the way they do it, I don't like. The way the Blue Cruise does it is great. It's like, so if I'm going down and I want to pass somebody, I turn on my blinker. It's giving me control. I change lanes, and as soon as I turn my blinker off, it's looking for the lane, and as soon as it detects the lane, it reactivates. So I don't have to like, disengage, re-engage, disengage, re-engage. It does the re-engagement automatically. And I find it's a slight detail, but makes the experience way better.
Got it.
And I'm typically the passenger. By the way, Baja Juicy said they hear Blues Clues every time.
I saw that.
Do it too.
Thank you, Baja Juicy, by the way. $4.20 super chat. Thank you. Very appropriate. Like it. Go ahead, Liv.
It took a while before you didn't say that too, Blues Cruise. But I'm normally the passenger, and I think that the cool thing is that when he's using Blue Cruise, I don't notice. The transition between intelligent cruise control, Blue Cruise,
or me driving,
or you actually driving, is I can't tell as the passenger. It's very seamless. Occasionally I'll hear the ding that it's put your hands back on the wheel, whatever, right?
That's when it cancels.
When it cancels, yeah. I'll hear that, and then I'm like, oh, you haven't been driving for a while, technically. Like the car has been doing it. But it looks like he is typically, sometimes he'll sit with his hands off the wheel, but like typically he's got a hand on the wheel all the time, and either the car is assisting or not.
Yeah.
So it's quite comfortable. And
one of the things that people have asked me, and this is like people that are just in general asking about, they'll call it autopilot because they don't know what it's called on Ford, but they're going like, does it drive itself? Does it have autopilot? I don't get into explaining those details, but the next question is like, do you trust it? And I very clearly always say no. And people are like, well, then why are you letting it do that? And I'm like, no, the whole goal is you're not supposed to trust these systems unless it's level 5 where you don't need a steering wheel. You're not supposed to trust any of these systems. So I have my hand on the steering wheel. I'm doing my best to pay attention. When I see traffic slowing down, I don't sit there and go like, it has it. I'm just going to like fold my arms and like my foot gets near the brake and my hands go back to the right position, So I think that's one of the things I sort of look at it as a different than a lot of people that don't experience it and think it's like, oh, it's driving for you. I'm like, nope, you're driving and you don't trust the system.
Yeah, it's funny because anytime I have a passenger in mind and I have like autopilot or full self-driving on, they're saying, oh, so you can take a nap and just fall asleep and it'll take you. I'm like, bro, no. No. There's a reason why I'm paying attention to the road is because I'm still responsible for the car. Like, yeah, it's doing, the car's doing most, if not all of the driving for me, but at any point something can happen and I need to take over because I'm ultimately responsible for the car. It's been such a fascinating thing to watch, and I'm curious how do you see Ford sort of evolving this over time? Do they have plans to make this into a level 4, level 5 system over time? Have they said anything about that?
They're working with Mobileye, and Argo AI, so I know they're doing a ton of research. I think all companies are. Tesla is the most out front with their AI day and whatnot of telling exactly what they're doing. And Ford, whether it's better or worse or, working with partners, I think it's worse because they're not in control of like the entire stack, but it's better because like Mobileye is collecting data from BMW, Mercedes, GM, and they're building a better system using a lot more data. So there's pros and cons to their approach. So I know that, like GM is with their Super Cruise has just went from like 100,000 to 200,000 to like 400,000 miles of roads that you can go hands-free on. Blue Cruise is at 100,000 miles. I don't know if they are, I believe that's, the ultimate goal. I don't believe they are as ambitious as Tesla is, as trying to say like this year, next year or whatever. I think they are more of the, we're researching and that's our goal. And maybe they have internal timelines, but nobody's, said anything, publicly about that.
Got it. And then a question about the Electrify America network. So when you do see another car at these chargers, is it usually another Mach-E or is it a mix of different cars?
Definitely a mix.
Definitely a mix. And that's where it's like,
driving you nuts.
Most of the time it's the ones having free charging. Like when we're on road
Yeah.
trip, like, okay, we're
Yeah.
out in the middle of nowhere. You're obviously not doing free charging. But like when we were in Vegas or San Diego or LA, it's filled up with VW ID4s and Ioniq 5s. And we did see one here locally recently. We're like, hey, are you on a trip or something like that? And he goes, no, I'm just running up to Boulder, and I don't charge at home unless I have to because it's free here.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I
right,
met
right.
a couple in an ID4, and they had a Rivian at home, and they were from New York, but they were doing a road trip in their ID4 because free charging. And then we see a lot of do we see Neros? No.
Well, actually, we see a lot of Neros around here.
But I wasn't sure if it was just Electrify America, because I think they have a partnership with EVgo.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's an EVgo.
Yeah, so I think we see them more at EVgo. It's definitely, I think, the partnerships that you see those EVs more in those areas, which is why it's such a bummer that Ford doesn't have one.
When we do see a Mach-E, we get a little bit way too
Super
excited.
I've started this thing now. Can you hand me, please? Thank you. I want to so that we have a really fantastic community. By the way, shout out to Zigma, who's in your chat and who is now a new subscriber, I believe. They're a Mach-E owner. He actually made a 3D printed Mach-E and has the STL out there for people to use, a pony. Really cool dude. Been chatting here and seems to really enjoy your community. So the Mach-E community is really great. And I've wanted to do something for people when I see that they have a Mach-E. So my new thing is I have little My Little Pony stickers. So I walk over and I say, I like your pony. And then I'll give them a My Little Pony sticker. So actually that 65 Mustang this weekend, the electrified one, I went over and I said, I like your pony. And they stuck it. They stuck a My Little Pony on it.
That is so awesome. That is so cool. I love that. Yeah. There is one thing I know as it relates to charging. I know Tesla's been talking about potentially opening up the supercharger network for other automakers. What do you guys think about that?
Depends on how they implement it, and depends on if we get our car vandalized when we're charging at a supercharger.
I didn't think about that.
Okay.
No, so it's more options are better. I know like the routes that we have taken have been fairly well covered by Electrify America. So I don't know if I would be like, oh, well, let me stop at the supercharger across the street from the EA station. But it would give me peace of mind. So for example, between Grand Junction, Colorado and Salida, Utah, everybody has to stop in Green River, Utah. Whether you're Tesla or thank you.
At least Baja Juicy is not.
Tesla and every non-Tesla has to stop in Green River, Utah to charge. And everybody, I think, no matter which one you have, your nightmare is like if that station is out, there's nothing around it. Like I think going west, there's like the next closest station is like 120 miles or something like that. So everybody has to stop there. It would be fantastic to say like, oh shoot, EA's down, let's go over to the supercharger, or vice versa. That I know last year, right after we went through Utah, the Beaver supercharger was down. So there was like people waiting for 2 or 3 hours because the entire intersection basically lost power. The gas stations, the supercharger, everything lost power. One exit down was an EA station that people could have used. So I know people that have the CCS adapter for their Tesla, they would be set, and that's the type of thing is like, we need to all be, all have multiple options because if it's a gas station that's out of service, you just go down to block, with whatever charge. Right. So I'm excited. If we have to pay an extra fee or extra rate, like that's fine. I just want to not have to worry about it anywhere, and it would open up some places for us because like right now EA only has like one station up in Utah, Wyoming. They're opening up 5 more at some point soon. But right now, if I want to go up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then west to California, which we did in 2018, I can't do that in the Mach-E. But if the supercharger network were there, I could.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as we were talking before around scaling and ensuring that there's enough like cheaper vehicles down the road for people, boy, does charging become a thing that we need to really address, right? To
Yeah.
ensure that if people really want to take those long distances, like we have to make sure as a community that we have that network, that we have that infrastructure, because that's only going to speed up the adoption. You know, if people have the peace of mind that they can travel anywhere and they're not going to run into something in a situation where there are not enough stalls or they don't have enough options to ensure that they complete their trip, then that becomes a gating factor for people. But if we ensure that's there, then we have a recipe for awesomeness in the future. So
Somebody wrote an article about this. I wish I recalled who it was, but they said it's like not only do we need charging at like the essential routes where we need to get places, but they're like, as far as for the EV adoption, like we need them in those out of the reach places that like they gave the example, like when you're driving in the foothills of California and the Sierra Nevada, to see like a charging station, because all of a sudden it clicks. It's like, oh, there's a charging station. And
right.
and that's something I think that Tesla and EA and EVgo could do a better job of, because I get so many people that go, well, what if you go skiing? Where are you going to charge? And then I show them the map and I'm like, look at all these little charging stations up there. And they're like, really? I've never seen a single one. And I'm like, that's because it doesn't say like Exxon with a big thing
Right.
or attached to it.
And some of them are just single units. Like even just the fact that around our area at the pound, the dog, what's it called? The shelter, the Denver Dumb Friends dog shelter. There's a charger there, a free charger. At some restaurants up the road, there's a free charger. So also the expansion to these less powerful chargers. I mean, we have so many options in the city. We need those every 50 miles on the highway.
Yeah. So many things need to be filled in.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Patrick, Liv, thank you so much for making the time and coming on the live stream with me and speaking about really everything EV. I thought it was an awesome discussion. I got to learn a lot about the Mach-E and sort of your side of things as far as how you're viewing the EV sort of industry. What I found really interesting, that we have a lot of like common thoughts around where we're going, and it's really cool to share. Like I had a lot of fun sharing my passion for EVs. I hope you had the same experience as well. But maybe for the viewership, any last words, and make sure you plug your channel, your Twitter for those that haven't joined us from the beginning, and I put your stuff in the description as well. So if you want to take a few seconds to plug that, that'd be awesome.
I mean, I'll pop in and say thank you so much for having us. I didn't know what to expect, but you are awesome. I appreciate your support of all EVs, and your community is obviously really fantastic, like really cool people. And I think you're right. We have a lot of overlap, and we have this little tagline that I say at the end of every video, and it is, whatever you drive, enjoy the ride. Because that's truly how we feel. It doesn't matter. We're all supporting EVs. This is a hard transition. There's a lot of complication. That's why we can have these conversations, and we support all of it. So it's so cool to be here and be able to see your community.
Yeah. And I know we didn't get to a lot of the questions and comments. We'll try to jump into the comments below after this is over. But if anybody needs to contact us, we are on Twitter and Instagram. It's Mach-E Vlog, MACHE_blog, or Google us. Send us an email. If you have questions, like we're completely open and authentic. We'll tell you what we don't like about the Mach-E and what we do like. But we're all, on Team EV, supporting the mission just in a little bit different way. So we had a fantastic time. This was really great. And I love all of the comments that we've gotten.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And
absolutely. It's my...
If you didn't know, if you just joined us, there we are.
Mach-E Vlog. There it is. Go subscribe. No, honestly, the viewership, the comment section, that's one of the things that I'm very thankful to really, there's a lot of positivity in the comments every time I go live, and I'm just so thankful for that. It's like, I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and I'm happy to hear that it made you feel comfortable. And thanks again for coming on. Appreciate everybody. Go subscribe to their channel, Mach-E Vlog. Hit them up on their comments, hit them up on Twitter. Thank you all so much. And then Liv, use your tagline to get us out of here. I love that. Go for it.
Just remember that whatever you drive, enjoy the ride. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Peace out, everybody. Awesome.